with people who have disability that you can't see. All you know is that they don't look normal and they don't look healthy to you. We have a society where it's completely reasonable and okay to not only refuse care, refuse access to spaces, but it is okay to literally treat them like they're mentally unstable, horrible people. Out of concern, like out of concern sometimes. And it's unbelievable, in my opinion. So to everyone out there who has a chronic disease, I want to say to you, you do not ever deserve to be treated like that. And for every time someone has come up to you and been like, well, what are you doing? Are you just not trying hard enough? What are you eating? What's wrong with you? Maybe you're good at your job or maybe whatever, but you're not healthy, so therefore you're less than. I am so sorry. You did not deserve that. You never deserve that. It is inappropriate that our culture does that. And I hope that through videos like this and through talking about it, people will start to realize just how unbelievably not okay that is. Because here's especially, I can only speak for myself, but I will say, I don't know anyone who works as hard as I do to try to be as healthy as possible so that I can be a functioning member of society. I do not know anyone who works as hard as I do through chronic pain, through chronic fatigue, through chronic everything, to do as much as I can to keep myself functioning so that I can be here and do this and show up. I am not just being flippant with my health so that I can be skinny. I would trade any minute of any day being normal size or even overweight if it meant I wasn't in pain every day. If I could have one meal that doesn't cause me pain, I would trade this in a second. I do not want to look like this. I love myself enough that I don't blame myself for this. I love myself enough that I love my body for what it's capable of. I know it's not but I would never choose to look like this. I would never choose to not be normal so that my message can't get spread. So that people still think it's okay to treat me like a deficient, mentally ill, unstable person. I would trade it in a second. But again, every single time I attempt to do anything about it, I lose my quality of life because of the disease that I have. I look like this because of the disease that I have. It is not a choice. And so this leads me into why our society tends to treat people like shit. Because number one, we as a humanity do not want to admit that there are things that we can suffer from that we can't fix. We want to believe that everyone who is sick is choosing to be sick, is doing something wrong, that it's some deficiency in them, because it gives us comfort to say they are sick because of their choices, because of the bad things they are doing, and therefore, if I get sick or if something bad happens to me, I can just make good choices and I can heal, or I can make good choices and I'll never have to be like that. That is really what we're doing. When we come up to somebody and we automatically assume they're sick, it's their fault, they're making bad choices, we are doing that to protect ourselves from the existential reality that we are vulnerable on this planet and that we have vulnerabilities we might not be able to fix. That is really what this boils down to. People are projecting their own fear of death, of suffering, of sickness that we can't control. And rather than being able to have compassion for people who are struggling, or to even see how hard they're working, how deeply not mentally deficient they are, how much harder it is for them to do literally everything they do in a day because they are sick. We don't have compassion. We immediately go into blame. What are you doing wrong? What are you eating? Why didn't you try this? Why don't you try that? And we're not doing it because we're concerned for them. We're doing it because we're concerned for ourselves. We don't want to believe that they are in pain and that it's not their fault, because then it means that we could be in pain, have it not be our fault, and then that's too scary. Second thing, right? If there is even a degree to which we can take action to make things better, even if we weren't the cause of our pain, our society still has a very messed up relationship with personal responsibility. And we tend to live in a very childlike black and white thinking, which is either I have no control, I can't do anything about this, and therefore I don't have to feel bad, and I don't have to feel shame, and I don't have to feel like it's my fault. But then I feel like I have no power to do anything about it. I just have to pray or hope that God will take it away or something like this. Or we feel like if there's anything I can do to make my situation better, this then means that it's all my fault, I could make it perfect, and I have to take complete responsibility for it. So that's where I was for most of my life. The fact that I could do things to make it better reinforced in my mind that it was all my fault, and the fact that I wasn't perfectly healed was because of me, and I was evil, and I was selfish, and I was wrong, and I was horrible, and I was missing something, and I wasn't trying hard enough, and I was a burden on everyone else. Instead of seeing, no, I didn't cause it. This is how I was my entire life. There are things that can help me make it better. But that doesn't mean that it's my fault. But we live in a world where people, that is how they treat us. The only time we get compassion is when we fully convince someone that we have no power over the situation. Then someone might have compassion for us. But if there's any level of, I could do something about this, there are steps I can take, we're like, well, so then this whole thing is your fault and you're just not trying hard enough. So that's a part of it. And then the third thing is people just don't know what they don't know. People literally come and look at people like me and they're like, you just need to eat more, even though they know literally nothing about me. And they assume that that's right. They assume that they know more about me, more about my psychology, more about my internal world, more about my body than I do because they looked at me. And that's still a thing in our society, that it's okay for people to judge one another based on snap judgments of what we see when we look at them. And to say it, especially if that person looks different. It's still okay in our society to be like, well, you don't look normal. You don't look healthy. So you must be stupid. You must be missing something. And me, a person who literally knows nothing about you, has never met you, it's still completely reasonable for me to come and make suggestions and tell you what I think and to diagnose you because I feel like it. And there's no empathy and there's no compassion for the person who has to receive that. And again, we're doing it for ourselves, right? We're not doing it to help the person. We're not doing it because we want to be supportive. We're not doing it because we actually care what's going on with the other person. We're having a visceral reaction to seeing vulnerability because that's what people see when they see someone who is chronically ill. We see our worst nightmare. And I don't think that people get this enough. That when people react to chronically ill people with, what are you doing wrong? This is your fault. With, ew, gross. With, oh, you must just be mentally deficient. With, I'm going to come up and tell you a whole bunch of things that I think you should do and I think this is what it is. They are not doing that for the person. They are doing that because in the person, They see a representation of one of the greatest existential crises of being a human, which is to realize that we don't have complete control over our circumstances, that we don't even have complete control over our bodies, as much as the law of attraction and spirituality wants to tell you that you do. That all sounds really good to the childlike part of us who doesn't want to accept that this is a big, non-human centric world where so much of what happens to us on a day-to-day basis is not because of us. And that means that we can suffer and we can be vulnerable and we can have pain that isn't our fault, that we didn't cause, that we don't know how to fix, and that that's a real reality. And so for a lot of people who have been able-bodied and privileged by society their whole lives, they're projecting their own experience, right? They're seeing like, well, anytime I was sick or anytime I was struggling, I just did something and I just tried harder and then I fixed it and I'm good. So everyone should be able to do that. And they're not seeing their privilege. They're not seeing that they weren't born sick. They're not seeing that they had money or they had privilege in society that the person they're looking at doesn't. They're not seeing that it's not that this person is working less hard than them. It's that this person is working harder than they ever did and is getting less good results because their life is harder. And we don't want to look at that. As a society, we don't want to look at it. So it's still socially acceptable to shame and blame people so that we can avoid having to look at how society might not be fair, how life might not be fair, how we might be vulnerable in ways that we don't have control over. And we have to look at that. So if you're someone who is wanting to actually be supportive of someone who is chronically ill, number one, unless somebody asks you for your opinion of what you think they should do, don't. Like, and I'm saying again, right? Like, I know we live in a world where people are going to do what they're going to do. And we don't have control over how people treat us, and we don't have control over what people say to us. And I'm going to talk to the chronically ill people on the other side of this. But I'm saying for anyone out there who's really just listening and just wants to do better for chronically ill people, don't give advice unless you've been asked. Because chances are that person knows more about their body, more about their condition, more about their own psychology and what's actually going on with them than you ever will. They probably have a PhD in their circumstances and their scenario. And whatever you're about to offer is either irrelevant, something they probably already have tried, or is so ignorant and out of touch with reality that it's a waste of your time. Unless you are an expert at what this person is going through, and you know what this person is going through because you have taken the time to ask questions, okay? That's another big thing. If the first thing you want to do is give advice, don't. If you really care about somebody, if you're actually concerned for somebody, you ask questions first. And not intrusive, what do you weigh, what are you eating, what are you doing questions. If you're actually concerned about somebody, you will say to them, first things first, I'm feeling concerned for your health. Are you open to a conversation? And you must give the person an allowance to consent or not consent. Nobody owes you an explanation for why their body is the way that it is. Nobody owes you a conversation about what's going on with them. Nobody owes you any information about their personal health, whether they're on the internet or not. That's completely unreasonable. That is very personal and private information. And just because you want it doesn't mean you deserve it. Okay? So if you really want to help, You're either already a close friend or a close relative or someone that this person knows, or you're an expert in something and you're starting with questions. Consent. Do you even want to talk about this? Do you want my help? Here's my credentials and how I think I can help you. Or I would like to know how to help you. And then instead of giving advice, ask the person what they need. If you actually want to help somebody who you've perceived to be sick, ask them if they want your help and ask them what kind of help they want from you. Instead of telling them what you are going to do, instead of giving the help you want to give. Again, remember, they know way more about what they are going through than you ever will. If they do want help, and if there is something you can do, they are going to know better than you know. So ask them. And a lot of the time, the thing that chronically ill people actually need is a soft place to be upset and to cry and to process. And it is not your job to fix us. We have experienced an entire lifetime of people either completely ignoring us, erasing us, making us invisible because we make them uncomfortable, or if people do pay attention to us, it's through the lens of, okay, I'm going to rescue you. I'm going to save you. I'm going to fix you. Both of these are incredibly exhausting. So if you actually want to help, understand that, again, most of the time, we don't want to be fixed. We don't want to be saved. We don't even want problem solving. We just want someone to tell us that it's okay that we feel shitty sometimes. It's okay that we're exhausted. It's not our fault. That you love us. That you're here for us. That we're doing a good job. And that's basically what we need. So much of the time we just need emotional validation. Because you're not going to take the pain away. You're not going to make it better. You're not going to save us. And we're not going to be saved. But we're going to go through times and places and spaces where it's harder than others. Where we're down. Where we don't have that resiliency. And just by you being there and telling us that you love us and you're there for us, you're doing more for us than anyone probably ever has. So if you really want to help, that's what I suggest you do. And then for everyone who is chronically ill, it is not your fault. 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 Even if you did something to cause what you're going through. Even if you played a role. Even if there are things you can do that make it better. You are not to blame. It is not your fault. There is no reason for you to have shame. And I know that the world shames you. And I know that the world blames you. And I know that it's this constant, like, ew, gross, we don't want to be around you. We don't want to have to look at you. It's a horrible feeling. And it's not your fault. And I will say that you deserve nothing but love and compassion for yourself. And if you do nothing but start to learn how to get on your own side, it will change your life. Because again, I will say for myself, getting on my own side, learning to no longer try and fix myself. Even my body, which is in pain all the time, so remember that. I'm not trying to fix my broken body. I'm trying to support myself the best that I can. That is the only way I have figured out everything that I figured out. Because no doctor has helped me. No practitioner has really helped me. I've figured all this stuff out on my own. By breaking through that shame that I'm just bad and wrong and need to try to be normal. Because that was what was keeping me stuck. That was what was keeping me from being able to figure out what was actually going to work for me. And one little step at a time. Just showing up for the you that you can right now. Because this is the other thing. It's not going to be ideal. None of us have ideal circumstances. When I first started this journey, right, I was in the middle of A lot of messed up stuff. And this whole time that I've been healing, life has not been perfect. There have been a lot of stuff, a lot of things going on in my personal life that I had no control over, that were very precarious, literal life and death situations. I'm not going to go any more deep into it because it is not my story to tell, but I had some responsibilities that were life and death, chronic stress that was just a part of my reality. I was fighting for my life by myself. And again, I consider myself to be incredibly privileged. I was able to do a lot of the things that I was able to do because I have a husband who supports me financially. And I make that very clear. I fought really hard for this life, and I fought really hard for what I have, but at the same time, I did have a lot of privileges. So that's another reason why I will get up here every single day, no matter how I feel, because there are people out there who have it so much worse than me, who deserve support. And that is what I am here to do. That is the promise that I made to myself, that if I was going to keep living, I was going to pay it forward. So again, I don't give a protocol and I don't give a prescription for how I made my life good, because it's going to be different for all of us. All I know are the tools that I use to figure it out. And it all starts with compassion and curiosity. Self-love is the only reason I'm alive. It is the only reason I have figured out a way to function in this body and to get better and better and better even though I'm not healed. It is the only way that I've been able to run this company while being chronically ill and managing a life and death situation and doing all of these other things and maintaining my composure and my capacity to be here for people and all that stuff, because I can. I've built a strong vessel and I want to do this work. I am not saying any of these things because I want you to feel sorry for me. I'm saying it because this work makes so much possible that we didn't think was going to be possible. When you get on your own side, it will change the way you see why what is happening to you is happening to you. It will change the way you understand what is happening to you, and it will help you start to see the steps that you can take to support yourself. And that is a massive shift from shame and blame and how do I fix myself to I am not broken, there is nothing wrong with me, how do I support myself, right? And that comes with learning how to support yourself emotionally, learning how to support yourself physically, setting boundaries, leaving places, doing things. Like, I did a lot of hard, scary things to get here. I've had to be weird. I've had to be a freak. And I use that term completely lovingly towards myself. But I'm a complete freak. I am not normal by any stretch of the imagination. And it's very isolating and it's very difficult sometimes. But at the same time, it's better than it's ever been. And I wouldn't trade this for any of the actual alternatives I have available to me. Because that's the thing. I was never going to have a normal life. I was never going to be a normal person. It was either going to be this or worse than this. And I am so grateful that I have what I have, so that is why I'm here to pay it forward. So, you are not to blame. It is not your fault. You have done nothing wrong. Even if you can help yourself, it is not your fault. You are not to blame. Get on your own side because you deserve it. You deserve to have the freedom that this work gives you. This is why I will never stop talking about this until the day that I die. Because this is the foundation for figuring everything out that you're going to figure out, for healing what you're capable of healing, for processing trauma, for all of that stuff. Self-love is the foundation. You are not shameful and you are not guilty. And I am so sorry that we still live in a world that thinks it's okay to shame and guilt people who don't look normal and people who don't function normally. And again, we have to understand where people are coming from. It is their own fear that they are projecting onto you. It is not that you actually deserve to be shamed or guilted or blamed. It's people don't know how to process their own stuff. That is where that is coming from. So I am so sorry that you ever have to deal with that, but I want to validate you that you don't have to take it in. You do not have to accept it. You do not have to internalize it. It is not about you at that point. When people are just judging you, when people are giving you suggestions that have nothing to do with asking you questions, when people are saying, this is all your fault and you're just doing this and you're just evil and you're just all these things, it's their shit, not yours. Every single time. You can do your work. You can admit where maybe you're lying to yourself. You could admit all of those things. But that still doesn't make you guilty or shameful. We all do it. This world is hard. It's really hard when you're sick. And you do not deserve anything other than love and compassion. And I'm sorry that the world still doesn't understand that. I know the world really wants to believe that we have perfect control, and therefore anyone who's not healthy is just not trying hard enough. That perfect health is available to everybody, and if you don't have it, it's because of you, but it's a lie. Perfection doesn't exist on this planet. It's a lot easier for a lot of people than it is for everyone else. But that doesn't mean that the people that are struggling because they're morally defective. And I hope that we will get to a place where we realize that all these judgments that we've had to people and treating people who are sick as though they are second-class citizens was barbaric. I hope we get to a place where we realize that that is true. Okay? Okay. So yeah, I have linked down below, anywhere where you're watching the replay of this, Everyday Detox. I've linked some resources for histamine intolerance and mast cell activation if that's something you're interested in. I hope this was helpful. Yeah, it's not your fault. It's just not your fault. And I'm sorry that this society still shames people. Because like I said, even if it was your fault, you still don't deserve ever to be treated like you're just a selfish, horrible person. That's never okay, no matter the circumstances. Love is always the answer. Understanding why we are the way we are and saying how do we support people better is always the answer. It doesn't mean we let people just do whatever they want. It doesn't mean we let people harm people. It's not that. But you deserve to get on your own side so that you can see what you actually need. Because shame and guilt aren't it. Ever. Okay. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. I will see you next week. Goodbye.